Close your eyes and picture dinner. Now, delete the refrigerator, delete the grocery store, delete the 12,000 years of farming that made both of those possible. What's left is nearly 290,000 years of human history, where every single meal had to be found, dug up, chased down, or gambled on. And guessing wrong could kill you. You already ate today without a second thought. That certainty didn't exist for most of human history. Not tomorrow, not next week, not during a bad winter that lasted longer than anyone expected. So, how did a species with no claws, no venom, and a stomach that can't digest raw grass survive a quarter of a million years before farming existed? Meat was one answer. Not gathered meat, chased meat. In 2006, researcher Louis Liebenberg published decades of fieldwork with sand trackers in the Kalahari Desert, across what's now Botswana and Namibia. He documented hunters running down healthy kudu, an eland in the middle of the day in temperatures past 40 degrees Celsius, for as long as 5 hours across up to 35 kilometers. No spear needed for most of it. The animal outran them at first. It always did. But a kudu can't sweat through its skin. It has to stop, pant, and dump heat through its lungs. A human, covered in up to 4 million sweat glands and largely hairless, never has to stop at all. Every mile the animal gains, it also overheats a little more. Eventually, the kudu simply collapses, and the hunter, still walking, finishes it by hand. It wasn't brute strength beating the animal kingdom, it was patience wearing it down, hour after hour, until biology did the rest. So if meat took 5 hours of running in brutal heat, was it really the daily answer? Probably not as often as you'd think. In 2010, archaeologist Anna Revedin and her team published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences after examining stone tools from 3 separate Upper Paleolithic sites: Bilancino in Italy, Kostenki in Russia, and Pavlov in the Czech Republic. Under the microscope, the grinding stones were coated in starch residue from cattail and fern roots, dated to roughly 30,000 years old. That's not scavenged food, that's flour. Someone was drying roots, grinding them into powder, and almost certainly baking a primitive flatbread over hot stones. A slow, deliberate multi-step process, not a quick snack grabbed on the move. 20,000 years before anyone in that region planted a single crop on purpose. Everyone assumes the diet before farming was basically an all-meat caveman steakhouse situation. It wasn't. Long before anyone learned to plant a seed, people were already turning wild plants into something close to bread, which means the first real food technology probably wasn't the spear. It was the grinding stone. And it wasn't just inland. Then there's the coast. In 2007, archaeologist Curtis Moraine led a team excavating a cave at Pinnacle Point, on the southern coast of South Africa, and found something that reset the entire timeline of the human diet: mussel and whelk shells, deliberately harvested, dated to about 164,000 years ago. That's roughly 40,000 years earlier than any previous evidence of humans systematically eating seafood. Shellfish don't run. They don't need 5 hours of tracking through the heat, and they don't require a single stone tool sharp enough to kill anything. They just need someone willing to work the tide line at low tide and know exactly when to show up. It's not a heroic image. It's a reliable one. And for a species living meal to meal, reliable may have mattered more than heroic ever did. But there's a problem with painting any of this as one long triumphant buffet. Here's where it gets strange. Once farming finally did arrive, around 12,000 years ago in the Fertile Crescent, most people assumed human health improved overnight. More food, more stability. Problem solved. The skeletal record says otherwise. Bioarchaeologist Clark Spencer Larson's research comparing populations before and after the shift to agriculture found early farmers were on average shorter than the hunter-gatherers who came before them, with more dental disease and more signs of chronic malnutrition. Trading variety for volume didn't make people healthier. It just made them more dependent on fewer things, and more vulnerable when those few things failed. Picture survival, and you probably picture young men with spears. That image is incomplete, and the truth quietly changes who the real hero of this story might be. In 1998, anthropologist Kristen Hawkes and her colleagues published research on the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last populations on Earth still living by hunting and gathering, and found that grandmothers, women well past their own childbearing years, spent up to 7 hours a day digging wild tubers. That labor alone helped feed grandchildren whose own mothers had new babies to nurse and couldn't forage as far or as often. It reframed the entire picture. It wasn't only young men with spears keeping people alive. It was old women with digging sticks doing quiet, unglamorous work day after day, for decades, so someone smaller could keep growing. So which one was actually the answer? The meat, the flour, the shellfish, the tubers? None of them on their own. The real technology holding all of it together was fire. Evidence from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, published in 2012 by archaeologist Francesco Berna, shows controlled fire use stretching back roughly 1 million years. Ash layers and burned bone fragments found deep inside the cave, far past any point lightning. Cooking doesn't just make food taste better, it breaks down tough proteins and starches before your body has to, which means more usable calories out of the exact same piece of meat or root, and less of your own energy spent digesting it. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham has argued that this single shift, control over fire, may be the reasons human brains, which burn through a disproportionate share of the body's daily calories, were able to grow as large as they eventually did. The real weapon was never the spear. It was the flame sitting underneath everything else on this list. So picture dinner again, the one from the start of this video, the one you deleted the refrigerator in the grocery store from. Add the fire back in, and that's it. That's the whole secret. Not a perfect diet, not one miracle food, but a species willing to eat almost anything, cook almost anything, and never once stop paying attention to where the next meal was actually coming from. You will eat again tonight, almost certainly without a flicker of doubt about whether it will be there. For roughly 290,000 years, that certainty simply didn't exist. Every one of your ancestors, all the way back, solved that same problem well enough to have you standing here. It isn't that ancient humans knew more about food than you do. It's that they could never afford to stop thinking about it. And maybe that's the real thing farming took from us. Not hunger, attention.